Vermicomposting or worm composting is a fun and rewarding activity. It can be done very easily at home, and it helps to break down the food material that you're not eating from kitchen preparation and allows for a fantastic compost then to be produced by these worms to be applied back to your garden and potted plants. So a very easy home can be made by just making holes at least a 1/4 inch diameter into a Rubbermaid container. The colored containers are preferable to the transparent ones because they do not like to be exposed to light. So one other thing I add to this is I will just hot glue some screening for screen doors and windows over those holes to prevent any pests from coming in and to prevent any little escapees from getting out. And then you want some holes in the bottom also for drainage. So you don't want it to be too moist in there. Some bedding options for a composting system for worms are really, you can use pretty much anything, but we're looking right now at some very easily accessible things like newspaper, old ripped shredded bags. You want to avoid glossy and shiny colored print materials, and those need to be pre-moistened and wrung out to about the wetness of a sponge. And then those can be spread out. So this is one substrate that can be used. In addition, you can purchase a lot of things like coir, which is coconut fiber, and that can be added to water. It expands and becomes very fluffy, and I like to incorporate the two of those, paper and the coir. And then also the cellulose packing peanuts that are the biodegradable peanuts. These can be added, they break down in water completely, and that's a food source for your worms. So a few things that you don't want to feed your worms. They don't want dairy, meat products, or anything that's too oily. So those are things you want to avoid, but they like pretty much everything else. Again, we want to make sure that they're not too moist, but if you can see, there's a lot of dampness in the soil, but it's not excessive. So we've got some worms wriggling around here. They're going to crawl away from the light. And after you're dealing with worms, you definitely want to ensure that you've washed your hands before you're handling food or anything. But you can see some uneaten food scraps here. They're basically going to do composting for you in a much quicker way than will be done without their help. So these are red wigglers. They're very well adapted to desert conditions and hotter climates, but we still have to be careful that in the summertime that we're not allowing these to heat up too much. We want to keep them in a shaded location, in a garage. Some people keep them indoors, but we definitely want to keep them out of the sun. Another thing that I've seen people use successfully are styrofoam coolers to be repurposed because there's a little bit of an insulative factor there. Some things to consider with their food. You want to make sure that the pH stays relatively neutral. You can check the temperature. There's an ideal temperature for different species of worms. And then also moisture. Generally you can tell just by looking at them if there's too much moisture or not enough moisture. But after you feed the worms, something to consider is keeping them covered. So when I feed the worms, you want to scoop aside a quadrant of your bedding material and then add your food right in there. The smaller the better, it breaks down more quickly. Cover it back up with the bedding, and then on top of all that, place moistened paper or moistened newspaper on the top. And that just helps to conserve the moisture, and then you want to put your lid back on. So there are some units available for teaching purposes, and this allows you to see what's going on in the worm bin, but also because, again, they don't like the light, they provided a little skirt so they can do their business in the dark here happily. So a few different options there. Again, you can buy homes online for your worms, make a lot of them very easily with inexpensive materials, and let these little workhorses do a great job for you in providing extra nutrients to your garden.